Philippines, January 6, 1995. When police responded to an apartment fire, they found a Toshiba laptop amid a batch of chemicals and bomb-making materials. An open file on the laptop revealed a plan to simultaneously bomb 12 U.S. airliners over the Pacific. The potential death toll, 4,000 passengers. Several other files used encryption software that scrambled the writings in secret code. The Philippine police decoded some of the files using a special computer program and uncovered a list of bomb-making recipes. All the evidence pointed to the most hunted terrorist in the world, Ramzi Youssef, wanted for his involvement in the World Trade Center bombing. Youssef's plots were stopped, and he was in U.S. custody within 6 weeks. It was a major victory for international law enforcement and revealed the importance of cryptology, the science of making and breaking secret codes. To trace the development of codes is to uncover the very fabric of civilization. Once a culture reaches a level of sophistication in literacy, science, and language, the demand for secret symbolic communication flourishes.
I think codes go back probably as far as there is language. People had something to keep secret. They needed to find some way to scramble it.
For centuries, codes have been controlled by governments, employed in war, applied in diplomacy, and used in espionage. But with modern technology, the use of codes by individuals has exploded, enriching cryptology and empowering citizens. A communications boom has heightened the need for codes to keep the information private on the internet, at ATMs, and in medical offices. Today's complex codes are the result of a historic seesaw battle between code makers and code breakers that has pushed the very boundaries of science. The earliest known code was an inscription carved into a rock by an Egyptian scribe in 1900 BC. It was an attempt to demonstrate wider knowledge by dressing up the writing. Ordinary hieroglyphics were replaced with unusual symbols, which told the story of the writer's master, Khnumhotep II. Another early code was used for secrecy. A tiny enciphered tablet found on the banks of the Tigris River, dating from 1500 BC, contained a hidden formula for glazing pottery. And the ancient Greeks created their own inventive coding methods.
One of the subordinates of a Persian monarch thought that it might be time to revolt. And he had an agent in the court of Darius the Great, and this agent sent a message to this man saying it's now time to revolt. He shaved the head of one of his slaves and tattooed on the head the word revolt, and waited for the hair to grow and sent the slave down to this man's palace. When the man got the slave, he shaved the head, saw the word revolt, and realized that this was the time, and he did revolt successfully.
In Sparta, a new instrument to encipher messages between legions was used. It was called a skytale.
A cloth was wrapped around a stick and a message written down the side. Wrapped around the stick, the message could be read. Unwrapped, it was scrambled. The message was sent from general to general. Unwrapped, the generals would have a stick of the appropriate length, could wrap the cloth around it, and read the message.
Every code had a key, a secret method of scrambling and unscrambling messages used by sender and receiver. Julius Caesar enciphered his military communications using a key that employed an alternative alphabet by moving each letter 3 spaces to the right. But with the collapse of the Roman Empire in 500 AD, European cryptology entered a dark age that would last for 1,000 years. But another civilization was rising in the East. By 900 AD, Arab society was one of the most literate cultures in the world, and the study of codes flourished. The Arabs were the first to record the methods of transposition, the scrambling of letters, as well as substitution, the replacement of letters with numbers and symbols. They were the first to outline specific techniques of code breaking that involved mathematical or frequency analysis.
The Arabs were very interested in letter studies, and they counted the number of times a character such as Aleph appeared in the Quran, and they discovered which letters began words frequently. They used this information, a statistical source, to learn how to break codes. The most frequent coded letter represents the most frequent plain text letter, and that's how you begin to solve a code, and they were the first to do this.
With the Renaissance, cryptology had a rebirth in Europe. In 1466, an Italian architect, Leone Alberti, developed the greatest cryptologic invention in 1,000 years at the urging of the Vatican. It was a system of rotating cipher disks with 2 rings of letters and several numbers. By scrambling so many letters randomly, it was the first to challenge the Arab code-breaking method of frequency analysis.
Previous systems just replaced A with D, only one at a time. The Alberti cipher disk used a disk in which these letter combinations could be changed from time to time, and as a consequence, A would be represented not by only one letter, but by many letters. This was called polyalphabetic, many alphabet substitution, and it was the basis for many modern cipher systems.
A French diplomat, Blaise de Vigenère, improved the Alberti system in 1586 by creating a grid of 26 cipher alphabets, each shifted 1 over from the last. By use of a key word, encoding and decoding communications using Vigenère's square could be calculated on a sheet of paper instead of having to carry a disk. Unfortunately, Mary, Queen of Scots, did not employ this new development. Beginning in 1568, Mary was imprisoned by her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I of England. In 1586, a group of Catholics sought to rescue Mary and put her on England's throne after assassinating Elizabeth. Her rescuers communicated with Mary through secret coded letters.
Her great mistake was in thinking that her cipher system was secure. It was actually being read by Queen Elizabeth's code breakers, and everything about the plot was known, and when it reached a certain critical point, Queen Elizabeth called a halt to it and sentenced Mary, Queen of Scots, to death.
By the 1700s, each European power had its own black chamber, a nerve center for deciphering messages and gathering intelligence. But the real revolution in cryptology was just ahead.
Telegraph, for the first time, made it possible to send messages quickly over long distances. In fact, it made the United States a continental power by increasing its communications power. It also raised the necessity for cryptology.
In 1844, Samuel Morse invented Morse code, a series of electrical dots and dashes to communicate over the telegraph. Because the code was public and messages could be easily intercepted, the need for new secret codes became acute. But the telegraph paled in comparison to the communication industry's next scientific development, one that revolutionized codes and was used with murderous impact in the 20th century.